Hey everybody, your Friendly Math Tutor here with episode 8 of our SAT mini course. Each episode we're going to dissect a specific strategy or a topic that will help you on your upcoming SAT, which is just on this coming Saturday. So today we are going to look at our last topic, which is solving for an expression. But before we get to that, let's go over our closer problem from episode 7, which was on percentages. This is College Board Practice Test 1, Section 4, number 20. Alma bought a laptop computer at a store that gave a 20% discount off its original price. The total amount she paid was P dollars, including an 8% sales tax on the discounted price. Which of the following represents the original price of the computer in terms of P? So the first thing that I would do is just notice that a 20% discount, the decimal that we talked about last episode that would be associated with that is actually 0.8, because 100% take away 20% is 80%, and 80% is 0.8. So we've got 0.8 for that, and then an 8% sales tax is increasing by 8%. So that's 108%, which is 1.08. So my answer should have 0.8 and 1.08 in it. Well, that right away eliminates it down to C and D, and we've just got to figure out which one makes sense. So this is where reading is extremely important. So we have to look for the original price. P is the final price. So our original price is the thing that we multiply by and we start with. So we're starting with some original price that we don't know, and we're applying a 20% discount to it, which is 0.8. And then we're applying an 8% sales tax to that, which is 1.08, and that is going to equal our final price. So since they wanted us to solve for the original price, all I would do now is divide by 1.08 times 0.8. Now, this is the calculator section, so you may be enticed to actually multiply 1.08 by 0.8, but this is where you should always be, keeping an eye on your answers. You can see in our answers that they didn't actually multiply them out. So if you do that, it might get confused. You might, be wasting time by doing that. So it's just important as an overall general strategy to keep an eye on your answers. You don't have to read through them all, but just do your work right next to them, so you're looking at them as you're doing the work, because the answers are a lot of times going to tell you where to go with the problem. So again, if this were a different type of problem, I probably would have multiplied 1.08 by 0.8 as my first step, but I didn't do that because I looked ahead and saw that in my answers they weren't multiplied together, so that wouldn't have been a good idea. So this leads to the answer D. All right, and that wraps up our talk about percentages. So let's move on. All right, now to today's topic of solving for an expression. So what exactly does that mean? Well, it sounds a little contradictory, because an expression is things that you evaluate and equations are things that you solve for. But what this is it's going to be in the format of, they're basically going to give you an equation to solve, but instead of in school where you would always be told, hey, find X or solve for Y or solve for B, you're not going to be asked to solve for just a single variable. You're going to be asked to solve for an expression. So in this case, it's 8x, or it could be, what is 3x plus 2, all right? We've had something similar to this before when we did systems of equations, which was episode 5. So if you think back to then, there were times, there was one of the types of systems that we were solving were ones that, there was one that was like find 5x plus 5y. So we just manipulated it to get to that point without ever finding x or y. Now, I'll admit, for that one, it's a major shortcut to follow the your Friendly Math Tutor way over the school way. I think you'll see today it's a really nice, solid shortcut, but in some of the problems, it might only save a couple seconds. But honestly, it's really more about just a mentality that you're just not going to do extra work that is unnecessary. You are going to have this mentality that I am going to take this test as efficiently as possible, and just having that mentality is going to have you just look at these problems differently, and you're going to stop looking at them the way you do in school, as far as like, okay, I'm going to show every step and I'm going to circle my answer and make sure the teacher can grade it. This is different. No one sees your work. They just see your bubbles and your grid-in answers, and no one's checking your work. So the idea is to do this test as efficiently as possible, and that's what we're going to speak a lot about today. Not necessarily, but even it adds up. You save 10 seconds here, you save 30 seconds there, you save a minute here. You get to a problem, and that extra time can really be the difference between getting a couple problems correct versus not even having time to get to them. And it all adds up. There's 58 questions, so this time adds up. But like I said, some of these, the shortcut is going to be minimal, but I do think it's worth just looking at things through this lens. And I think just overall looking at the test that way is going to just improve your score just by doing that. All right, so I hope that makes sense, and it'll make much more sense as we dive into these problems. So let's take a look at the opener problem. This is College Board Practice Test 1, Section 4, Number 4. If 16 plus 4x is 10 more than 14, what is the value of 8x? So the first thing is they don't actually give us an equation, but they don't write it as an equation, but we're going to do that. So I would, as I read this, I would have just done, okay, if 16 plus 4x means equals 10 more than 14, well, 10 more than 14 is just 10 plus 14, which is 24. So they give us an equation to solve. So I would have done that first regardless. So now let's take a look at the school way. The school way would be, let's just solve for x. Oops. So we get 4x equals 8. I divide each side by 4. So x equals 2. So I go, oh, hey, my answer is right there, right? And not quite. Because they didn't ask us for x, they asked us for 8x. Well, 8x means I need to plug 2 back in, and so I go 8 times 2, and that's 16, and 16 is C. So that is how we would do it in school. You just solve for x and you substitute back into the expression. But what we're going to do is we're going to try to make that process a little bit shorter. So in your Friendly Math Tutor way, what we're going to do is, again, when we read the problem, we would still write this equation. So 16 plus 4x equals 24. And instead of solving for x, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to manipulate this to get directly to 8x, and I'm going to skip the process of ever finding x to begin with. So if I subtract 16 as I did before, I get 4x equals 8. Well, instead of dividing by 4 to get x, I want to go directly to 8x. So the way that I make 4x 8x is I just multiply each side by 2. And then I get 8x equals 16, and then I'm done. So I just saved a couple steps. I do realize that some of you can just do those steps that I saved in your head so quickly that I may have only saved you a couple seconds, but others it may have saved you 10 or 20 seconds. And again, it's more about you should just have this mentality of I'm going to do this test as efficiently as possible, and that's going to give me the highest score possible. And there's really no arguing, this is much more efficient. I don't know if I would say much more, but it's definitely more efficient than, it's like, why would I find x when they don't ask me to find x? You're just wasting time by doing that, all right? So let's keep going and see this in action in a couple different ways. All right, now to our second problem. College Board Practice Test 9, Section 3, number 17. 4x plus 2 equals 4. So I have an equation. If x satisfies the equation above, what is the value of 2x plus 1? Notice no answer choices, so this is a grid-in question. They asked for the value of an expression. So right away I know I'm solving for an expression. There is no reason to actually find x. But again, let's just go through it really quickly and talk about the school way. In the school way, I would subtract 2. So I get 4x equals 2. I would divide by 4. Ah, man. So now I've got 2 over 4, which is 1/2, and I've got a fraction. Well, I know a lot of you probably don't like dealing with fractions. This is section 3, so you don't have a calculator to just punch it into. And now we've got to plug this in, or substitute into our expression. So 2 times 1/2 plus 1. Well, that makes it a little easier. 2 times 1/2 is just 1, and 1 plus 1 is 2. So our answer is 2. The expression evaluated at x equals 1/2 is 2. All right? So again, that is not the most efficient way to do this problem. Let's take a look at your Friendly Math Tutor way. And the most efficient way to do this is to start with our equation and simply just find a way to get from 4x plus 2 to 2x plus 1. Well, I see a really quick way, noticing that 4x is twice 2x and 2 is twice 1. So what if I were to just divide everything by 2? And would you look at that, 2x plus 1 equals 2, and I'm done. There's really no arguing that that is going to be a lot easier, and it's also going to get to the point where if your whole mentality is I'm going to be as efficient as possible when I take the SAT, and you look at this and you say 4x plus 2 equals 4, and they're asking me about 2x plus 1, well, I just divide by 2, I get 2, and you do this problem in literally 3 seconds. It's like you finish number 16, you jump to 17, you're like, oh, I'm done already, and you're right on 18, and you have just banked yourself a bunch of time. Because as we know, 18, 19, and 20 are the last 3 problems of section 3, and they're going to be more difficult. So you just added some time to be able to figure those problems out. All right, so let's keep it going. All right, now on to our third problem. College Board Practice Test 10, Section 3, number 20. If u plus t equals 5 and u minus t equals 2, what is the value of u minus t quantity u minus t times quantity u squared minus t squared? So they ask us the value of an expression, so that is what we're calling solving for an expression. They give us a system, u plus t equals 5, u minus t equals 2. And let's take a look at the school way. Well, the school way is let's just solve this system. So these are already opposites, so I'm going to add these together so that they eliminate. And I get 2u equals 7, and u is 7 over 2. All right, and then I would need to plug back in. So let's say I pick the let's do the first equation. So 7 over 2 plus t equals 5. T will then equal 5 minus 7 over 2, and 5 is 10 over 2, minus 7 over 2 is 3 over 2. So now I've got to go in and I've got to plug these in for these individual values. This is just getting ridiculous, right? So I'm going to do u, which is 7 over 2, minus t, which is 3 over 2, times u squared, which is 7 over 2 squared, minus 3 over 2 squared. And now I have to evaluate this. Well, this one's not too bad. 7 over 2 minus 3 over 2 is 4 over 2, which is just 2. And then this is 7 over 2 squared, which is 49 over 4, minus 3 over 2 squared, which is 9 over 4. And finally, they're really making me bend down for this problem. So 49 over 4 minus 9 over 4 is 49 minus 9 is 40, and 40 divided by 4 is 10, and 10 times 2 is 20, and that took a while, all right? So that is, again, just using the methods that we learned in school, the elimination method, and then plugging each value into our expression to get our expression to be 20. That is not efficient. All right, so now let's take a look at your Friendly Math Tutor way and see what efficiency really looks like on a problem like this. So we are actually not even going to write these down. We're going to actually start with our expression. So one thing to do is, since we have two equations, instead of trying to manipulate them, in this case, sometimes if your expression isn't completely simplified, which it was in all of our other examples, you want to try to simplify it. And the best way to do that is if we remember how to factor, u squared minus t squared is a difference of two squares, and that factors to u minus t times u plus t. All right? And, oh, not plus 7, plus t. All right. So now this makes this problem really, really easy because u minus t was told to be 2. So this expression is 2. I don't need to know that what u or t were, and they both end up being fractions just to make the process even longer. I just know that u minus t together makes 2, and u minus t makes another 2, and u plus t makes a 5, and 2 times 2 times 5 is 20. And there, you really, really saved time on that problem. And this was a number 20, so this was non-calculator, and the hardest problem on section 3, because it's the last problem. And you just did it that quickly, and now you've got time to go back to some other problems that you may have skipped, and you're really, really being efficient, all right? So let's move on. All right, now to our fourth problem. This is College Board Practice Test 3, Section 3, number 2. If 3r equals 18, what is the value of 6r plus 3? So this is a case, so we got 3r equals 18. Let's just do it your Friendly Math Tutor way. Obviously, we could pretty easily find r here, but again, it's about just having this mentality that I am not going to find r when I don't have to. I am going to just make this look like this expression. So if it's 3r and I want it to be 6r, then I'm going to multiply both sides by 2, and I'm going to have 6r equals 36. And then if I want there to be a plus 3 here, I can add 3 to this side and add 3 to this side, and I end up with the expression that they asked me for equaling to 39, and that is D. So that's just an example of how quickly we could do this. I do understand that if you can figure out this pretty quickly, that r equals 6, 6 times 6 is 36, plus 3 is 39. I don't know how much of a time saver it is on this problem, but again, I keep stressing this, it's really about just having this mentality that you are going to be as efficient as possible, and it'll be all consuming for the entire math portion of the test. And it will result in a higher score just by looking at it that way and changing the way that you look at it, all right? And almost like refusing to be like, well, I'm not gonna find r because I don't need to. I need to find 6r plus 3. Keep focus on what your goal is and get to that goal. Don't detour because you've been taught in school to do it one way the whole time. Start to look at things a little differently, and you'll start to see your score will definitely improve just from that. All right. All right, now to our closer problem. This is College Board Practice Test 7, Section 3, number 16. If 2x plus 8 equals 16, what is the value of x plus 4? So this is a grid-in, no multiple choice, and I just want you to think about how can we go from 2x plus 8 directly to x plus 4 without actually finding x. That is your goal, and we will go over that in the next episode. Even though this is the last episode, we are actually going to be having a couple bonus episodes that you'll have to stay tuned for, all right? So we will go over this problem at a later time, all right? All right, now to today's takeaways. So solving for an expression. So you're going to recognize this when they give you usually some equation or even a system of equations, And what they're asking you to do, it's usually going to be worded, what is the value of, and instead of it just being x or just y or just another variable, it's going to be an expression. So like x plus 4 or 7x or 18x minus 5. And usually, almost every time, there is a way to manipulate what they gave you directly into that expression where you don't have to find any variables and substitute back in. On some problems, the time saver is going to be very minimal, but on other problems, it's going to be extremely, extremely important to use this strategy. And it's really, again, just about a mentality of, I'm going to do this test as efficiently as possible. And even on the problems where it doesn't save as much time, still do it that way. Because again, you may not know how much it's going to save you until you do the problem. So you don't want to get into it the school way and be like, oh my God, I should have done it the other way. So if there's very little drawback to this one. We've talked earlier in the course about certain strategies, like maybe plugging in answers or choosing your own values, where in some cases they work great and in other cases they really could be detrimental. So you got to know the difference. For this strategy, quite often for solving an expression, it is always going to be quicker. It's just whether it's just a little bit quicker or a lot quicker. So it's much better to just do it, have this, again, mentality that when you're solving for an expression, you're just going to get there the best way possible. All right, so I think that's it. I really, really appreciate everybody watching all 8 episodes. As I mentioned earlier, there will be a couple bonus episodes just before the SAT this coming Saturday. So I will see you in those. Again, please like us, follow us, subscribe to our video, leave comments below. Find us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And until next time, your friendly math tutor is out. Okay.